It's Jan Błachowicz, right? He called me 7 weeks before his fight against Rakic, which is a very, very strong striker in the division. Before that, Jan lost his title, his belt versus Glover Teixeira, and he said to me already. I mean, we saw it all, right? Everybody who watched the fight saw it. When he walked out, he wasn't the Polish power the way he was before, right? He just didn't have it, didn't want it for many reasons, right? And so he gave basically a present to Glover.
Cześć, nazywam się Mateusz Brela i witam Cię w moim podcaście Champions Way. Audycja o psychologii sportu i nie tylko. Jest mi niezmiernie miło, że chcesz ze mną kroczyć tą mistrzowską drogą. Ten podcast to audycja przede wszystkim dla każdego, kto szuka czegoś więcej, kto chciałby się rozwijać i kto chciałby znaleźć swój kawałek podłogi nie tylko w tematyce psychologii w sporcie, bo w tej audycji poruszam wiele różnych innych tematów z różnych dziedzin życia codziennego. Zatem zapinamy pasy, tankujemy płyny i zapraszam Cię do wspólnej podróży. Cześć, witam Cię w moim podcaście. Jeżeli jesteś tutaj po raz pierwszy, bardzo się cieszę, że znalazłeś tą audycję. Jeżeli wracasz, no to cześć, witam Cię ponownie. 171 odcinek mojego podcastu. Gościnią była Daria Albers, psycholożka, trenerka mentalna, która pracowała m.in. z takimi zawodnikami UFC, których nazwiska możecie znać, jak Mateusz Gamrot, Mamet Kalidow czy Jan Błachowicz. Rozmawialiśmy w tej rozmowie o zdrowiu psychicznym mężczyzn, o kryzysie męskości, o tym, co to znaczy być prawdziwym mężczyzną, jak buduje się wzory do naśladowania w życiu. I naprawdę ta rozmowa wydaje mi się, że mogła być nawet jeszcze lepsza od tej pierwszej. Przede wszystkim ja nie napotkałem tutaj żadnych problemów związanych z audio. Oczywiście Daria nie nagrywała w studiu, nagrywała w warunkach domowych, więc starałem się wyrównać tutaj jak najbardziej te ścieżki, przyciszyć moją, wyrównać Darii, troszeczkę podkręcić. Mam nadzieję, że będzie to fajna uczta w języku angielskim oczywiście, dlatego że to jest pierwszy język Darii i chciałem, żeby czuła tutaj pełen komfort i pełen luz. Wiem, że dla niektórych to może być wyzwanie, natomiast dla mnie tutaj dobro mojego gościa, mojej gościni było w tym momencie ważne i chciałem, żeby przekazała całą siebie w tym odcinku. Mam nadzieję, że dasz radę. Zapraszam Cię do tej uczty, bo naprawdę to była uczta i wiem, że to nie była ostatnia rozmowa, jaką z Darią nagraliśmy. Korzystając z okazji, jak zawsze, proszę o zostawienie oceny, gwiazdek na Spotify'u, napisanie komentarza, tak jak wspaniale to robicie do tej pory. Dziękuję za każdą opinię, za każdy feedback, który od Was dostaję. Również kciuki, komentarze na YouTubie, gdziekolwiek tylko chcecie mnie znaleźć, możecie tam dać mi znać, co sądzicie o odcinkach, plus jaki inny być może temat chcielibyście, aby pojawił się w mojej audycji. Druga sprawa, zapraszam Was do wirtualnego wsparcia mnie i mojej twórczości, tego podcastu, rozwoju tego podcastu, ale również tego, co publikuję i produkuję na moich platformach społecznościowych czy moim w newsletterze. Możecie to zrobić standardowo, stawiając mi wirtualną kawkę, a dzisiaj piję tą kawkę za Malwinę, za Dana, za Agnieszkę i za Danielka. Dziękuję za to, że postawiliście mi naprawdę dużą dawkę wirtualnej kawki. Ja właśnie sobie specjalnie na Waszą cześć przygotowałem tą kawkę i będę sklejał ten odcinek i ją popijając ją. Bardzo Wam dziękuję. Możecie zrobić to wchodząc na stronę Buy Coffee Tu. Link jak zawsze w opisie. Dziękuję za wszystkie kawki. A teraz przechodzimy do odcinka. Welcome in the episode number 171. You might have heard my today's guest in episode 167 because once again I am hosting Daria Albers in my podcast. Daria, hello.
Thank you, and thank you. Welcome again.
Yes, it is very exciting to talk to you again. We were planning on recording 2 episodes in one day, but sitting for almost 4 or 5 hours in one recording, that would be a little too much.
Yeah.
And we already saw that we can talk and talk for days.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Daria, today I wanted to talk to you about mental health, but specifically within the man environment. Because as we were able to get to know you in the first episode, you mainly work with men, and you're not only men, right? But mainly, maybe you can tell me how much, maybe percentage wise, how much men do you have in your as your clients, and how many women do you have as your clients? But I think specifically men, and this is a subject of a very, very, I think, good discussion, because we're talking about men being crisis, or the crisis of masculinity, or the problems with even defining what the real man is like, and what does the man do to be a man, right? A lot of topics in one question. But I guess I wanted to first ask you, like, is this the main part of your job, working with men?
Yes.
What is it percentage wise?
I would say probably 2/3, even more, of my clients, athletes, are men, because look, I'm in MMA, so that's a very male-dominated sport still. Although the women, especially in the States, so most of the women I work with, they're from the States. So there's a little bit different. There's much more women in the sport, also on the mat. You can see it in the gym. That is, I can't say percentage-wise, but here in Poland is still not that many. Some gyms, yes, some gyms have really good female teams also, but mostly it's still a quite male-dominated sport in general. Also, look, in between the coaches, that's even, like on the mat, athletes, okay, you can still see maybe, let's say, 1/3 women. But between coaches, like especially on the professional levels, almost none of them. I'm the one. I'm the only one. It's like sometimes in the UFC you see some other woman in the corner, but not as a head coach, not as a striking coach. Usually, they come along, and that is something which we need to change in our sport. Definitely, that needs to be adopted.
Yeah, I know you kind of spoke about it in the first episode that we recorded, but my question is, how are you doing with being one of the few women working with men? And as we agreed in the first conversation that we had, you work with big boys. Just to name two names, right? It will be Mamed Khalidov, Jan Blachowicz, right? These are like 100% men, like beasts. You can see power, strength, right? You don't see many. This is just the external, right, view of someone who's watching them, right?
Yeah.
And you tell me you work with them as a mental coach, as a psychologist, right? And how are you doing? How are you handling being a woman in such a man-dominant environment?
First, so there's so much I can say about this now. So, my friends and colleagues in the States, where I spent most of my time, or a lot of my time of my life, they always say that I'm a pioneer for females in this sport, and it's seemed to be true. When I look around, it seemed to be true. So it's not always easy, because being a pioneer, as you know, right, you don't have really role models to look up to. Yeah. That is sometimes what is a little bit hard. Not anymore, maybe, because I'm 39 now. I'm growing up also, and I think I know who I am, and I have a very clear work ethic, and I know what I'm doing, I would say.
Yeah.
But it is like being a pioneer is not always easy, right? Because you don't have any road to follow, right? You have to cut the roads, right, and create the roads. So it's not always easy, but since I'm a striking coach also in MMA, it makes it a lot easier. And that is something what I say also to other sports psychologists, especially females, that for me might have been a bit easier to work with those guys. At least that's what all the guys say, right? If it was now Gamrot, because I'm working with Gamrot also, or Mamed, or Janek, or also the American fighters in the UFC I'm working with, they said it's much easier to work with me because I'm on the mat with them. I was a professional fighter. I am a striking coach. So I am also a friend from the mat. I'm a buddy.
Yeah.
who we trained together. We sparred together in the past with the smaller guys, at least. Obviously not with Mohammed and with Yannick and the light heavyweights, right? And weight division, but with the smaller guys, 66 kilos, 61, I sparred, right? So I wrestled with them, I sparred with them, did kickboxing, everything, which made my transition to be a mental performance coach much easier. Because they trust me more. They know. They usually say, when I started, they were like, you're quite good as a striking coach, so you can't be terrible as a mental performance coach. And it made the transition much easier because of this, because they trusted me already as a teammate and as a coach, as a striking coach. And then, then I introduced the mental performance and mental skill training to them. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? What's the difference for some? You've explained it to me even before we recorded the first podcast. But what is the difference between the coach and the striking coach, or what is the role of a striking coach in the staff?
In the MMA team?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So MMA is it's a complete sport by now. But it's still divided in mainly three different sports. It's striking, so it's kickboxing and Muay Thai, right? Striking, boxing, everything around striking. There's the wrestling part, and there's BJJ, right? And usually, of course...
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
sorry, right? So those are three sports. In general, they come together in MMA. At the beginning, it was like this, that people from all different sports came into MMA. Now, 30 years later, MMA is its own sport. And striking for MMA is very specific. It's not like Muay Thai. It's not like kickboxing anymore. It's no boxing. It's a very specific to the sport. Wrestling for MMA is different than the usual wrestling, right? Same like BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for MMA. It's all adapted. So it's one sport, basically. So all of us coaches kind of know what's going on also in the other sports. But you're usually specialized in something. One is specialized in BJJ, one is specialized in wrestling, one is specialized in striking. So I'm specialized in striking because I was a professional kickboxer and I adapted my striking style to MMA very early because I went to the States very early in my career and they forced me to. Although I love kickboxing and Muay Thai still. But I very much like the MMA striking. It's much more technical, tactical. It goes actually really well with the mental performance, like with being a mental performance coach, because in MMA, in striking, you can see immediately when there's mentally something not right? The reaction time is off, anticipation is off. You can see the flinching, the nervous system reaction in the faces, in the body. So for me, it was much easier as a mental performance coach, go in with the guys, go on the mat, like what I do usually. When I start working with them, all of them, I went into sparring. First times when I see them, I like to observe the sparring. Since I know the sport, I see quickly, right, what's going on. Like I said, when the anticipation is off, when the reaction time is slower, how do they react when they get hit? How do they react when they dominate the other one? You can see a lot. Like that's why fighting in martial arts is such a beautiful thing because you can see everything. The whole character comes out. Your habits are coming out immediately because the sparring or fighting is such a high pressure situation you can't play. And it's not a team sport, right? It's you. It's the fighter alone. And that's why usually my first analysis I do on the mat with them. I observe them. When I came to work with Jan Bohovic for the first week, I was just observing and doing a little bit of exercise, but mainly observing. And the team, although they knew why I'm there and who I am, they weren't sure actually at the beginning. What is she doing? She's like stalking us.
And what is the role? Right? What is she gonna do with that knowledge?
They knew my role, but they didn't know exactly. So she's watching. So what? Right?
Yeah. What is she gonna do with that?
Yeah, exactly. And then I did.
That's super interesting, and it's especially when you went into the psychology of fighting, right? And I remember how you said in the first episode that everyone should fight, everyone should try it, right? Everyone should train. And I've had an episode, I think, two or 3 years ago when for a couple of months I've trained kickboxing for the first time in my life, and I thought that going there, I had a one-on-one coaching, And I was sure that once I go there, I'm like, yeah, I'm a football player, so I know how to move my hips. I'm a pretty, you know, mobile person and mobile athlete, so it's probably going to be easier for me because I kick all the time, right? No way. It was to sync the moves of my foot with my hip, with strike or with a punch, right? And remembering to cover my face with the other let's say hand. It was so difficult. The transition of using like 3 or 4 elements at the same time, incredibly hard. And I remember it was exciting for me, but it wasn't a good time for me to train kickboxing because I still played a bit of football. So I had to dedicate more time for kickboxing in order to get better, and I was only able to give once a week training, and I wasn't really able to give more. But I remember how difficult mentally it was to break through that old habits and never using all those parts together, right?
Yeah, but that's completely different movement patterns, right? Between a soccer kick and a kickboxer or Muay Thai kick.
Yeah, I thought it's the same.
Yeah. Usually what people think. It's actually a lot of soccer players that come sometimes on the mat and they're like, hey, I know how to kick a ball. So I know how to kick a leg or the person, and that's a completely different movement pattern, which not always is helpful. But yeah, martial arts or MMA in general, look, it's 3 different sports, right? It's such an incredible, difficult sport to do, but it's also beautiful because of this.
Yeah,
beautiful because it's diverse. You can many different styles. And there's did you just lose your microphone?
Okay, I got it now. You can hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut it. Sorry.
All right. So you know, martial arts that's why it's such a beautiful sport, because there's so many ways to be also good in the sport. It's a sport that's why I love it so much, because the guys or girls, as we said, mainly guys I'm working with, right? They have so different characters, so different body types, and completely different skills and abilities, and you can still be good in that sport. Of course, you need to know striking, you need to know wrestling, and you need to know BJJ. But how do you apply those techniques, and how the style of fighting can be really completely from super calm and composed and very quiet and introvert type to someone who's more on an aggressive scale, right? Who's like very active, very aggressive. There's room for everybody in our sport. And that is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, because in other sports, look, let's say when you sprint 100 meters, there's certain genetics that will play a point, right? There's certain technique you have to perfection the technique, right? There's no many things you do in a different way, right? It's like who has the better genetics, who has the better training and the better technique, right? And in MMA, there's so many variation of each techniques, of positioning, of that. That is why it's such a beautiful sport. Like I said, that's why we have so many different characters in our sport. The guys I'm working with, they're really completely on every psychological spectrum, from super calm to more, like I said, on the more aggressive, active spectrum. It's interesting, very interesting.
So that's why you really have to pay attention to, at the beginning, to observing them and seeing all those patterns to come up with your own answer of what type of a fighter is that person.
Totally. I profile a lot, like so profiling then basically psychometry is a lot part of my job, observing, but also intuitive as a coach, right? Because there's always a psychologist in me, but then there's the striking coach. So I bring both together. So I spend a lot of time for analysis. If it's a questionnaire, but also much more observation, right? I write down everything, every little thing. I see their physiology. So what as you know, right, the zone of optimum functioning, right? Everybody has a zone where they function at their best. Some is on a higher arousal, for some it's on a lower arousal levels, like how to get there. And so on. This is part of the work at the beginning, right? Where does this athlete needs to be, right? For example, Mahmoud Khalidov is a fighter who fights amazingly when he's calm and peaceful, when he has really like more on a lower arousal level. He needs to have fun. He needs to be like really calm, right? Rather low arousal. And then
So you don't need before the fight or in the peak week, let's say, you don't need to do a lot of like, rah motivational, like arousing stuff.
Totally not. That would be for him actually. I think if I would come to him and be like, okay, let's go, Mama, let's go, you would be like, are you crazy? Like, did you fall on your head? Right? But this is like, and then, for example, then you have someone like Jared Gordon. That's a fighter of me. He needs more activation. That's also his fighting style is like this. So you can really see the fighting styles in MMA is there what character they have also together, right? Jared is a very proactive guy. He faces life head on. That's what he head on literally, right? So also in the fights he likes to take the shot. So, but and me as a coach, I have to talk completely different way of communication, different words and different exercises, especially leading to the fight. Or Gamrot, right? They're more on the active. They need this aggression. And in my job, that is the fascinating, but you know what, I was just talking in a seminar about this. This is also what is really taxing. Because when I go, let's say I have fight week with 3 different fighters, literally, Mateusz, I feel like I'm 3 different coaches.
You have to be.
Completely. And I was just talking in Norway in my seminar about this. So I have a fighter. He's very much on the activations, right? And that's not my nature. I'm someone who performs best when I'm calm. That's why Mehmet and me, we get along super, super well because we immediately understood each other. We formed a team super quick. And it was just my natural self who could work with him. And so I have this fighter. He needs a lot of motivation, a lot of aggression when he gets into his fight, right? So I was like in the hotel room, right? I have to like really ramp up myself, right? It's almost like I'm going to the fight. I'm playing this fighter. I show up to him, like we go to the fight and I show up as my regular, calm Daria. He will be like, what the heck? Why are you even like, this? It will pull him out of his zone of optimum functioning, right?
Of course.
Too low aroused. And so I need to prepare myself in the hotel room, right? So I'd be like, look, I really do the activation breathing, right? I get myself really, I was like, okay, let's go. I was like, if someone would ever see me before the fights, like all the different situations. With one, I'm like, calm, breathing, okay, control, I speak calm. With the other one, I'm like, okay, let's go.
See, but you're laughing, but I know it's a serious matter when it comes to actual work one-on-one with that fighter, because I can totally relate with what you're saying, because let's say my job consists of working one-on-one in let's say even if it's online, right? Because I have some clients who I work online and some clients who regularly come into this space where I'm in right now, and it's almost the same thing when, let's say, I have 4 clients in one day, like this is just an example, and every single one is a completely different story. Maybe I have one 30-year-old bikini fitness player. Then I have a dancer who just came back from the World Cup. Then I have athlete who is depressed right now. It's actually like the ill depressed, and we're working on getting him out of that state. And then I'm working with with an athlete who just got her qualification for the Olympics. And I can get exactly what you're saying, because I have to change my energy too for each one of these sessions. You know, I can't be all hyped up on the session when I work with a depressed player.
Absolutely.
I have to change my mindset, and then I can't be depressed when I see my athlete who just got their Olympic qualification, and I need to hype up for her too, right? So it's incredibly hard for us to tune off. It should be turn on, tune in, tune out, turn off, turn on, tune in, tune out, and then repeat it a couple of times in a day, or repeat it in a couple of times every day for the whole week, for a few months, several years, and etc. Right? You really have to, as you were saying in the first conversation we had, you really have to love what you do, right?
Absolutely.
And you also have to manage your own mental health.
Yes, exactly. And that's why mental skill training in that moment, that's why we need to be the masters of mental skill training. And I think I could say about myself that I mastered that skill very well by now. It, like 10 years ago or 8 years ago, was a completely different thing. And but it's constantly mental skill training. And I mean, you have to do what you preach, right? Absolutely. And we talked in our first episode about that, right? Authenticity. Just be real. And because a lot of, not a lot of people, but there are some people who are full of shit in our world, right? And this authenticity is something I'm allergic to. I say, I just don't, because you can not deliver. Like, if you don't do what you preach, you will not deliver.
Yeah, you just talk the talk. You don't walk the talk.
Yes, exactly.
That's the whole problem. I could talk to you forever in that topic.
My athletes are very, very, those guys are sensitive, and they can see this, right? They can pinpoint immediately when you're full of shit. And they call me out also sometimes. So it's good.
That's a good wake up call, and also you have a lot of distance to yourself, right? And it comes with wisdom, it comes with experience, it comes with age, right? Like it's hard to have distance to yourself being a 20-year-old today, right? In the world that you live in, but it's easier when you, with time and with the tools, right, that help you become better at what you do and grow mentally, right? Mainly mentally. It's easier to have it, right? It's easier to have been called out and say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
Listen, again, I could talk to you forever in that topic, but I really want to get into that and tap into that whole mental health in men. So I'm sure we're gonna get into those topics that we were just had a conversation about. But is there space within your environment so that 2/3 of your clients within those big, gigantic, strong men, covered in blood and fights and with those championship belts? Is there space to talk about mental health, emotions, problems with these types of men? I don't want to be ignorant because I'm saying these types of men, right? But you know what I'm saying,
Yeah, because like the guys I'm working with, doesn't matter if it's the special forces or even top level business people in business, right? They have big companies running. But also, of course, the MMA fighters, they're tough and they are alphas. They're for sure. They're alpha.
They have to be.
Which, it really depends. It depends a little bit. There are a lot of cultural differences. Right? I would say that the guys in the States and the UK are a bit more open for those conversations at the beginning than the Polish guys. But then on the other hand, really, in general, martial artists compared to other men, right? Like, especially the professional guys in MMA, they're quite evolved and they're quite conscious. And of course, at the beginning, it's always they have to check me out also. They need to see, like, what is she about? What do I like her? Do I don't? They need to get a feeling for me too, also. But after a while, usually we talk about emotions, but it's it has to be, So the thing is that we have the stereotype of the fighter, right? The super uber tough guy, and it's a stereotype from movies, from we took on, right? From they're socialized like this, and that the tough guy never speaks about emotions, the tough guy, but that's all suppression, right? This, of course, is bullshit.
Yeah, it's the superheroes that, create a vision of a man that has to deliver no matter what.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, he's a failure.
Yes, exactly. And I work with extremely strong, evolved, conscious, successful males, right? And most of the top level guys are extremely in tune with their emotions. They're extremely conscious because they do the work, right? They are on this journey, and they understood somewhere along the journey. Most of them actually, who are like, let's say in the 30s, because that's usually when they get a little bit more mature, men, 30s and 40s, right? They failed already in their career or in their business, right? They had their up and downs, and they started questioning and looking a little bit deeper into their mind, right, into their soul and their heart, and they don't have problems to show vulnerability. It's their strength, right? Because that is like, once you understand that failure, success, same thing, or the shadows of the light parts of your soul, of your mind, we all equally have them, right? That it's a human thing. It has nothing to do with man, women, all right, stronger or weaker people. We all have that. We all have topics we didn't work out. We have topics we worked out well. We have things we try to hide. We have things we are a little bit more proud of, right? And the most really successful fighters or men, but also more the guys who are more in leadership roles in the special operation forces, same thing, super evolved. Actually, with them, it's not extremely hard to talk about those. They're expected actually from me, right? When we do mental performance training, that's the main actually of my work. So what people sometimes don't understand, again, because of the stereotype. So what does make a fighter a really good champion's mindset? It's like, oh, willpower, oh, motivation. Sure, true, for sure. But mostly consciousness, right? The awareness of oneself, right? Of the weaknesses and strengths, of really working, again, with their soul, with their mind on a constant level, right? Opening, showing vulnerability. That is actually what most of my work is around. Of course, focus, attention training, right? Of course, emotional regulation stuff. But all of this builds on consciousness, right? Self-awareness, empathy, which is, look, that's another thing, which fighters, they're like, what? Because there's a stereotype, like you go to the fight and your opponent is your enemy. Yeah, of course, it's your opponent, right? But it's not your enemy. The enemy is your ego. And that is the thing, right? That's what my work is a lot, like the shell, because especially young guys, they have this shell of, because it's the stereotype, because it's conditioned and socialized like this. You have to be tough. You never show emotions, right? You have to, that is where but you get so rigid and you break, right? That's exactly it, right? When the tree is not rigid, it will break. Yeah. And but that is what is taught from the beginning, often, let's say, right?
Men don't cry, right? We say.
Yes, exactly. They don't show emotions and so on. But it's actually absolutely the opposite. The most evolved fighters and almost all of the top level fighters in the UFC are quite conscious. You might like them, you're not. Maybe they talk a bit less shit or more shit. Of course, right? It's media. But they are conscious about themselves. They're quite in tune with their emotions. They have very good communication skills also when it comes to communicating emotions. And I think actually that is what I can observe, the step between, like, when someone is amateur or early professional, they step it up to the top 5, let's say, in the UFC. That's usually what they understood. They got conscious, they got self-aware, and they worked out certain things. Like when they're quite in peace with themselves, that get really top level fighters.
So how do we get from the space where that young man or young adult says, I have a difficult time to talk about my emotions, or even worse, I don't feel emotions. I don't have them. I can't express them. I don't know how. How do we break? Because I know you said consciousness. I know you said self-awareness, empathy, right? But I'm wondering, and I'm very interested in that tapping in part, that breaking ice, right? That helps you to get from I don't feel emotions to that turning point, which is, okay, I'm self-aware. I know what is going on.
You mean, how do you walk from complete disassociation to being really in tune with oneself?
That sounds like
the whole spectrum, right, of self-awareness and consciousness.
Exactly.
But that's the road for all of us to travel, like sometimes in certain topics, because all of us are conscious in certain topics, completely unconscious in others, right?
Yeah.
But also in life, I think that is also part why we're here, right? To get from unconscious to probably a little bit more conscious. That would be at least something to favor in our lives. But
it's like this good space being conscious of your unconsciousness.
Yes,
that's a good start.
Knowing what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
The more you know what you don't know. Exactly.
Exactly that.
It's quite scary sometimes. But especially with the younger guys, I think first is role models, right? Choose the right role models for sure, and that the guys who are the role models, the leaders in, let's say, in fighters, right, the top level fighters, they talk more and more about this, right? So we need a bit more education and a bit more awareness in the field, in each field, right? Look in soccer, more and more guys speak out, like the top level guys, or in tennis. They speak, right? They really talk, and they talk about their true self, about their true emotions, their deeper thoughts. So there's a tendency already, and I think that is extremely important, because good role models, extremely crucial for every young upcoming athlete, for every young person, right? Choose your role models. And, as we know, with right now what's going on in Poland with the influencer scene, right? You can choose less favorable role models and more favorable role models. And that is something, as a coach, we're also here to guide. Right? So I talk with, especially the younger guys, a lot about the champions I'm working with, the guys I know they look up to as fighters for their fighting skills, right? And especially for the mindset. So when they say, "Oh, this guy is super tough," and he's like, "Wow," he's like, "I can't believe he's mentally so resilient," and I'm like, "Yes, you know how he is actually. You know how much he worked." He's like, "Yeah, you just have to be tough." I'm like, "No, you have to be like really working on yourself." He's super in tune with himself. So I explain. I bring also in role models. So my champions speak with my students, for example, with my younger students. They talk, and then so first is education, of course, creating role models, but then also self-awareness practices. We come once more, like in our first podcast, back to mindfulness, self-awareness. It's the key to everything, right? So little practices. You start with 5 minutes, before, after training. Just because I don't even start with them like, okay, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of mindfulness practice. They don't have the attentional skills, right? They don't understand. They don't have the motivation to it. But we start with 5 minutes before the training, a few minutes after the training, like, let's talk, let's experience, like, step by step. And if it's mindful breathing, right, mindful breathing, or if it's like some body scans, some embodiment exercises, this all leads at the end, observation of thought, of course, this all leads to more self-awareness and understanding of oneself, right? Changing perspective and so on. And that's step by step, right? You can't push anyone. You can't. If they're not ready, they're not ready. But they don't know often because they usually have maybe not the right role models, and we don't educate them well enough.
I like that. So let me summarize that, or try to put it together, and you tell me if this is a correct way to start, or maybe one of the ways to start. So first you have to be aware of your dissociation. So first you have to be aware of the problem, right? And name it. So I have a problem with naming, feeling, experiencing, living my emotions, right? Like, this is the part one. 2, find something or someone who can help you take the first step. So maybe find out more about what it means to be mindful, how to work on your active consciousness, so being here and now. Maybe download the matrix of all the emotions that human being can experience, print it out and put it on your fridge and look at it and say, what am I feeling right now? Which one of those emotions are connected to what state I'm in right now, right? Maybe that's a good start. And then most importantly, I think, look at the people who can become your role models. And I say it very carefully because I know that young men lack the role models in today's world.
Yes.
Because we live in the world where father usually becomes a, I don't want to say that he's just not present. Like, this is probably the biggest problem in fatherhood, that the father is not present. The father doesn't take part in growing his son, let's say son or a daughter, it doesn't matter, it's just child, right? Human being, and putting him through that initiation of becoming a young man. And I think the association with the emotion, right, helps avoid problems of dissociation, right? With all the emotions. And I think it doesn't have to be father, because it can be other fighter, it can be an athlete who maybe speaks out about that, right? But would that be a good start?
Yeah, totally. Of course, naming, labeling, recognizing one's own emotions, but also educating oneself how the mind really works, because we don't learn that in school. They don't teach us a lot about the mind, about the brain, and that's very, very unfortunate. Almost disables us, right? Because we're born with a beautiful tool, the brain, right? It's an amazing organ, but we never get like an instructions or help how to use it, really, the mind and the brain and the body. So it's both. So, and then building, of course, like coaches have a lot of responsibility. Teachers,
true,
they all need to go through the education, because when I speak sometimes to teachers or in schools, right, it's I'm not so shocked about the students. I'm rather shocked about teachers often, or coaches, other coaches, because I educate coaches. So a lot of coaches also in MMA. I'm actually friends with most of the top level coaches in our sport, in the UFC, and with the biggest teams. Friendly acquaintance, right? But we have very regular contact, and they come to me for advice, how to deal with their own emotions, how to be better coaches. And you can see that there's also a lot of potential untapped, not just in the athletes, not just in the students, but coaches, teachers, leaders. We need to engage them also, and understand that, of course, everybody wants to create a champion, but if you lack the skills to create, and because physically, especially like, for example, here in Poland, the coaches skills-wise, amazing. Emotionally, mentally, there's still a lot of potential until really, truly, because they never were interested in that. I think I made a little bit of a difference in the sport here in Poland, based on what my fighters and other coaches say, or the people in the sport, but still not enough. There's still a lot to do. But coming back to you for sure, naming, labeling, recognizing emotions, educating, finding role models. That's very, very good place to go, because look, what you expose your brain and your mind with, that's what the mind will work with, right? So you need to expose yourself to the right informations. It's so you have, like, let's say you're a young athlete, right? We all have our role models, like our heroes in the sports. Even I as a coach on the top level in the UFC, I still have my heroes in the UFC, and I love them, right? I'm friends with them, but they're still my heroes. But I talk to them a lot, or if you can talk to them, listen to everything they've done, all the podcasts they've done, right? What is really behind that first image, right? How did you get there? Expose your mind and your brain to the right information, and then everything will come from this.
And I think it's also a huge responsibility of those athletes, role models for the younger generation, and they need to do a good job. I don't want to say better job, because it would insinuate that they're not doing a good enough job today, right? But they have to do a good job of stating and showing what the real manhood is.
Yeah.
Right. And this is important.
Look, for example, in boxing, Tyson Fury, right?
Yes.
That's the boxer who speaks a lot about this. We both shared his story lately on Instagram also. So
I shared it from you.
So, I had a chance, I think it's like 8-9 years ago, to train with that team, to get to know them, to observe them in training, outside the training, the community they build, the way they communicate. And that was where Tyson was in I think, apparently on what he said on his worst, right? Around 2014, 15, 16.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was when it was really bad with him, with his mental state. And he says all the time he struggles, right? He struggles constantly with his mental health. And look what this guy accomplished. I mean, wow. And he's a really amazing character, a very, very interesting man. The whole community they have, actually. So, yeah, you see like the biggest names in our sport, the people who are our heroes, they struggle. Like we all struggle. We all struggle with mental health. That's just based on our culture also. But it's not easy not to struggle, actually. Very little people do ever not struggle. So, yeah, it's getting there, though. A lot more fighters speak about the mental health. Jared Gordon, actually, is one of my fighters. He was heroin addicted. Right? He went from a heroin addict to top in the UFC. And he is an incredible, inspiring man. Mm-hmm. There's so many stories. Like, I can't talk about all of my fighters I work with or worked in the past, but really incredible stories of overcoming adversity, but all through facing really their shadow, by raising awareness, by getting more conscious about that, and all started to work with all the mental performance coach, all the sport psychologists. It's getting more normal, I think, and it should. It should. Yeah. Our heroes and the champions can talk about it. We all can talk about it. It's If you break your leg, you will not fix it by yourself, right? But when you have a mental issue, you try to hide it, to suppress it. Especially young men, we try to suppress it because we got socialized by this, and that's the problem. Also, why it's not so often discovered in men, because they suppress it and they show their negative mental state rather in things like aggression, right, in overly fake masculinity and so on. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so hard to get them into the right treatment, therapy, coaching.
Mm-hmm. Because they think I feel like it's also a man's role to keep it together.
Yes.
You have to hold it together. You have to carry on. You have to be strong. You don't have to. You cannot show weakness. You have to deliver. And I think men go with that stereotypical thinking, and that's why I'm sure you probably know that statistic, right, with the suicide rate, which is completely scary, totally scary, right? 12 out of 15. It's not the actual rate of the suicides, but it's the attempts, right? Are men, and then usually men are also more effective at killing themselves. How it sounds very bad, but I was, for the lack of better words, I had to use those, right? But I think they hold it for so long,
yes,
that once it all falls out of the whole emotional jar, there's just no way out.
Yes, of course. Right? You suppress your whole life. Mm-hmm. A lot of my fighters, when they come to me, they suppress their whole life. Exactly that, all the emotions, and they never had a safe space to actually express the whole of who they are. The whole of we all need a safe space to do.
Yeah.
And but then the transitioning or the transformation is incredible. Once you give them the safe space and you educate them, then, because people are smart, right? My guys are really smart. they get there pretty quickly. And once they have this aha moment, when they observe their mind and they understand more deeply the workings of their mind, that's when they level up tremendously. It's an incredible transformation you can see. And Tyson Fury did it also, right? You can see from where he literally thought every day about killing himself to where he is right now, right? Still, of course, and he says that's still mental health issues, because that's just that's just how it is, right? It's a lifelong journey, but a much better space, of course, completely different space where he is now.
Yeah, but I also think that we look at the struggles in life as something that is really bad in our everyday life. Yeah. And I think it's also the cultural thing that unless the day is perfect, then you struggle and you always look for that perfection that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And we look at the chaos. The chaos is something super normal. Chaos is part of the adjusting to everything what happens. And we look at chaos as something destructive rather than, okay, chaos is like a wind, right? Wind can blow in each direction. It can blow in your back, it can blow from the front, right? Like you cannot control the chaos, which is the wind, but you can always control the way you look at it. But I feel like we tend to look at the wind as in chaos and say, no, it's terrible. There's nothing I can do. Look at it, like it's awful, right? Look what's happening, right?
But when it comes to, let's say, negative emotions, suffering, and so on, it's also the emotional charge it has, because we, again, it's much more programmed and socialized than it really is, right? Because we learned that it's something bad, so it's emotionally charged. Right? With negative emotions, we fall into victim mindset, right? That's why we struggle so much, because there's so much ego involvement, because that's what we learned. We picked it up. And that is the real struggle. It's not the negative emotion, because once you see you detach, let's say, right, and you step out of it and you observe instead of participating in everything there is in your mind and in your body, right, which you can learn, although at the beginning it seems really weird for people, right, but you can learn to detach from it. And that's mental skill training again. It just takes a bit of time and process, right?
Of course.
But once you take away this emotional charge by detaching, by stepping in neutral awareness instead of judging everything, but taking out your ego of this equation, then a negative emotion is just exactly what it is. It's just another negative emotion. It's okay, it's just another thought. Is just a thought, right? And that is the practice, right? I practice that a lot with my athletes. And me even, right? Because it's usual, right? Negative states have a lot of emotional charge, right? We don't want to be there. We want to get out as fast as we can. And because when we don't have the right tools, we have so much resistance, right? But we don't know we want to fight it. And that's another thing. It's another stereotype for men, especially also in the fighting circle, right, that you have to fight negative emotions, right? Look, that's why I'm not a super big fan of those motivational videos on YouTube. It's cool if you want to get up at 5 a.m. to run, of course, it's great. But usually when you do it, you should know why you're doing it, right? Yeah. You need to be like, okay, willpower, toughness, and so on, right? You have to break, you have to overcome your fears. Of course, it's all true. But it also portrays that's the work fighters or strong men have to do. You have to fight and resist it. Mostly, actually not. It's not about fighting and resistance, because fighting, you cannot fight the mind with the mind, right? If you start fighting your mind, good luck, right? If you go into war with your mind, that's exactly what happens. Look, in an actual fight, in an actual MMA fight, what is the most problem for the guys if they, like, especially when they're on the losing end? It's because they have an internal fight. They don't fight with the opponent unless it's really like this. Opponent's faster, stronger, more skilled. That happens, right? And you take it, you fight as good as you can, right? You go down, okay, part of the game. But most of it is the internal fight. Right? It's this emotional charge, because you judge every of the actions, everything that doesn't go your way, you immediately put into resistance, and it makes you actually stiff. For an athlete, the last thing you want, right? A stiff body. right? The nervous system acts out. You get really, you slow down, you're stiff, your eye is not good, right? So anticipation, speaking about the beginning of the talk, right? Anticipation reaction time goes down immediately, right? And this is also something. And so instead of like fighting and resisting and everything with facing it with aggression, like we need to step out, right? Work certain things out, like bring calm, bring peace into your mind, right? And that is something which martial arts is about this, right? It looks like sometimes in the fight, of course, because we have a lot of will, we punch each other, we bleed, and that's of course willpower. But there's a big difference between chaotic aggression and focused aggression.
Yeah. We have a guest?
Yeah, sorry. Someone just called on my phone and
No worries. So would you say, because what I'm hearing out of this is that the message from the external world is you always have to suffer, you have to fight.
Yeah.
I remember that from, it's one of those saying in the motivational videos that I was listening to probably like 10 years ago. If you want to breathe as bad as you want to be, if you want to be successful as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful, which means that like you have to work so hard at it. You have to devote your 100% self. You have to want the success with every single breath, right, that you take. And of course, it's appealing, right? It's exciting when you hear that. It's very attractive, right? But it puts you in a state of a sympathetic nervous system all the time, yes, as we're talking about in the previous.
And that is super good what you just said, because I believe it's true. So if you want to be on top level where you in your sport, it's true, right? You need to want it more than anything else. But exactly what you just said. Now, how do you get there is definitely different than it's portrayed.
Exactly.
We'll try to get there through constant struggle, right? And it's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy that you have to struggle. It has to be fun. Look, that's why I of course, all of us fighters, we like the Rocky movies because they're so dramatic. But that's exactly it, right? Fighters think they need to go through a Rocky story to get there. And of course, you fall, you rise, you fall. But the internal road is different. It's something more than just struggling, resisting, and fighting, right? It's and that's why we are martial artists, right? It's self-awareness. It's looking inside yourself. It's like working really out of like acceptance to yourself, like showing vulnerability, looking into your shadows. You can't do that when you struggle, when you fight, when you're in resistance with yourself or with your environment. All those things, like when you elevate yourself, self-development, let's say, happens, of course, through struggle in the outside. So we need to have some resistance from the outer world, otherwise we wouldn't grow, right? Nothing without resistance. But the internal journey is much less aggressive than it really is portrayed. But all those, also like sometimes when you see on Instagram the motivational coaches, yeah, it's portrayed different than what our work actually really looks. Especially, I know it from the real inside, because I'm a striking coach, I'm a professional fighter, and I'm a mental performance coach of some of the best athletes in the world. I know exactly how it's done, right? And it's much less aggressive than people think it is. And that is really important for people to know.
That's super interesting. So, see, we're just talking about the incorrect, bad portraits of man and the way that needs to be taken to get to the success. And as we say, the portrait is incorrect, right? Maybe the way is good, or the moral of the story is good, that you want to have it badly, but the way you go about it, not so sure that it's a good way. But we should start from, I guess, trying to define like what would be a correct portrait of a real 100% men in today's society. And when you look at your athletes, right, what kind of image comes to your head when you hear that question? Who's a real man?
What is a real man? You know, it's funny because this question seems like a dating question. For a woman, but for me, like Daria, not the woman Daria. What is a real man?
Daria, what does the real man have?
But yeah, you know, as a woman, but as a coach, it's actually very similar. What I think is a real man, and it's physical, mental, spiritual strength.
Okay.
So this is another thing what is completely underestimated. Men, in order to feel really content and happy and in their powers, they need physical strength. Men, every person, right? We speak about men now, but I think it's similar to women, right? We as human beings, we need to feel strong. We need movement, right? So coming back to men, physical strength, surely. Mental strength, mental skill training, of course, the ability to, not to that you always feel joyful, that's of course never happens, right? But to know that you have the skills to face actually life head on, to self-efficacy, right? That you can actually deal with things, that you will find a way, you have the tools and techniques and you will apply to overcome that obstacle, right? Of course, spiritual strength or spiritual development, right? Being conscious, being self-aware, and so on, having purpose and meaning in life. But those things just come when you are really conscious, right? When you grow up, when you mature, really, then that's it, right? Then when the man is physically strong, when he can lift some shit, sorry to say, right? But that's how it is, right? When he can move some shit, he feels good, right? When he knows, I try to bring on that obstacle. I like it. Let's figure out the problem. He knows he can figure out the problem, and he has some purpose and meaning in his life. That is when you see a man, and that's usually also the man and look twice when I see someone exactly in this energy. And just to make that picture, I think it's very equal for women. Right? Very equal of women. There's a little bit different topics maybe, but very equal. And so that is, so we need to take care that man feel man again, right? Strong, capable, stable, right? And that is by doing stuff. It's not just, you cannot talk yourself through it. And look at our culture right now. Like there are weak men, weak people. So I don't want to be like this weak man, but weak people. We are a culture of weak people, right?
That's true.
Our youth, and it's not, I'm not even saying that as a negative judgment to make them like, okay, to punish them. It's just like they're physically not really capable. They lack a mental skill training, and ask a 15-year-old or 20 or 25-year-old, what's your purpose and meaning? Right? I mean, that was not different in our generation, right? If someone asked me 15, 20, 25, I didn't understand it too. But I mean, we can change it now. Right? And
that's true.
And that is something we need. We need more of this and less of media, less of what's going on right now. Right?
Yeah, the external false portrait, as we said before.
Yes.
And I think this is also the definition that I like, and I kind of think that once you have all of those mentioned by you, just in the last couple of minutes, you can add on that interesting idea of being a man, or in other words, man is someone who can adjust to the situation. So it's like a situational manhood, right? So once you have all the tools and you know that each one gives you something different, you know how to use them in the right way, in the right situation. Because that way you can become a better man, better athlete, better partner, better father, better brother to your sister, better son to your mom, right? And I think this is crucial too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we get better people by doing that, for sure, men and women. Like show me one person, and I bet on this. You wake up in the morning, let's say you do a little bit of mental skill training, you do a short meditation, or you do some breathing, not hours, like 10 minutes of breathing, 15 minutes of meditation, whatever you want to do, right? Then let's say that you go to work, then after work you do your training, you train once a day, you do something, 30 minutes of kettlebell training, lifting weights, I don't know, go run, do something, and you spend a little bit of time reading or listening to something, engaging in something that gives you meaning and purpose. That is already absolutely brings you into a healthy state, mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
That is like the transformation by just engaging in this is incredible. I see it in all my clients, right? I see it in all my athletes. So that it's not actually that much what we have to do, and it doesn't cost a lot, right? This is something what we always forget. We think like, oh, we need biohacking, whatever. Like biohacking, meditation is biohacking. Good nutrition is biohacking. Training is biohacking, right? It's like the word got so huge, right? But that's biohacking, and everybody can do it at every moment in their lives, if you have money or not. And out of this will come success, because you will step into your powers. When you step into your powers, you change your energy. I can see it when I train more and I go on the mat. The guys immediately feel it. They see it, of course, because I walk different, I talk different, I just feel better, I sleep better. When I eat good, of course, I feel it immediately. My whole energy is changing. And what people sometimes underestimate is how much we observe each other. Right, so all of those things, right? Training, mental skill training, and engaging in something that brings them meaning and purpose, right? Being more content, being more stable and strong. When they go on the mat or off the mat, other people will feel, because there's a change in energy. You walk different, you talk different, you breathe different. Right? By this, people will actually pay attention to you. All of those, like, and I mean, literally, right? I work with the toughest guys in the world. That's exactly it. That's how I see a champion immediately, even if they're not. I see them walking over the mat and they're always like, Coach, how did you know? Because sometimes 5 years ago I said, like, this guy will be top level UFC. Of course, by skills, but also I see it by their energy. They walk different, they talk different, they look you into the eye, and they have those clear, deep eyes. Almost every champion, when you see them, they have those really deep, clear eyes, and they look at you when they speak. You feel like almost like, wow, okay, he actually sees me. Lets him also be seen.
Yeah, you can look right through that person, not only in the eyes, but through them, right?
They don't hide so much, right? They just show up as exactly who they are. And that is something, like, for example, I myself work exactly on this. I do my meditation practice, I engage in something that gives me meaning, and I train. And that's why I still train. Even when I'm not a professional athlete anymore, I take care of this. And the guys, like, look, a lot of men work with me who never work with a woman, like most of them, right? Because there's not so many in MMA. And they say exactly that thing. They're like, I looked you into the eyes, Daria, and I knew, like, wow, that's the real deal. Right? I don't bullshit them. And what I said before in our podcast also, that they call me out on my shit too, and that's amazing, right? Like, when you're strong, when you are a leader, when you're a strong personality, you have no problem with people calling you out on your shit, or saying, yeah, that's actually my vulnerable part. Here I feel emotional. Here I feel really weak in this. It's no problem. They see it in me, but I see it also in them. And almost every great leader is exactly that. They show their vulnerable parts. They show exactly who they are, the whole of it, without that emotional charge, right? Speaking about that. Because you can speak about all of your vulnerabilities, your weak spots, when there's no emotional charge, no ego attachment. It's just a thing. And people will recognize that. So many men, they're scared because they think people will judge them how they see themselves. A lot of negative judgment, a lot of those negative emotions. But you show up, like, I see it with my guys, or I see it also myself. You show up to someone and say, yeah, okay, I fucked up here. I'm not good in this. I'm weak. I got overly emotional. You say it without an emotional charge. It will be just exactly an information.
Yeah.
You will see that the reaction of the other one is often, if he's not completely stupid and unconscious, sorry to say that, right? That person will react also super neutral to this. And that's where you build relationships, and that's where you can grow together as an athlete and a coach, or an athlete and an athlete, whatever, right? Whoever you speak about with. It's extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think that the difference between the people that you see, the champions, right? The champions that you see, the way they walk, talk, and look at you, and the people who maybe are not there yet, right? Because you can be a champion in anything you do, right? It doesn't only equals to you have to fight in UFC or you have to be a professional. You can be a champion at every single thing that you do in your life. You can champion your life, right? Almost. But would you say that the difference is because it kind of showed up in my head when you were picturing that situation, that the people who are very confident in calling out their bullshit because they know that they walk the talk and they know that they leave everything in the arena, right? Which is whatever you can put in there in the right, in the space. And the other people haven't done that, so they almost like, because I feel that fear of man to be uncovered, almost like it's like a scary mystery, which if you uncover, you see all the weaknesses, all the soft spots, and all the red dots where you click them. The worst comes out from that man. Would you say that would be the main difference?
Yes, the main difference is if you step on a mat and you look at 30 guys, you can see immediately who's in the champion's mindset, because you can see this calm confidence, right? They're there. They show up with whatever good or bad it is, and they train like this too. They're not scared to step out of the comfort zones. Someone who didn't do the work right now, who's still fighting with their ego, let's say, they often spar and train in their comfort zone. So they stick to the techniques they know, they always work, right? And that's why their progress is extremely slower, right? Okay. But a champion, like they step out of the comfort zone without judgment. They're like, I talk to them, and that's how I teach them also. You have to lose a round sometimes in order to win the whole fight. Right? Yeah. That's how it is. You have to, because especially in sparring, right? A lot of alphas get together, right? You need to do it. You cannot be dominated. But you have to sometimes. You have to, even when the other one will get the impression, oh, he's stronger, he's dominating you. He doesn't know what you're even working on, right? Maybe you worked on the defense. Maybe you worked on some positioning, something to bring 1-2 techniques in, right? That are hard to. And to that level, you can just come when you overcame that ego shit, right? And that is a big difference. You can just literally see it, how they walk, how they train, how they react when they get into a choke or into a submission, or when they get punched in the face. You can see it. There's no emotional reaction to that, right? Of course, not always, right? If it sometimes comes closer to the fight, there's more emotions involved, right? But that's the general thing, and you can see that immediately. I can point out immediately when I come to mat. That's why I love my job. I scan there, I'm like, wow, here. That's. And I love it. It's super exciting and super interesting.
Okay, so the question that arises is how much of that is talent and how much of that is teachable? Because sometimes it sounds as it's not teachable. You just have to have it.
Yes. Oh my God, this is the question I love. Because, that's another, I think, stereotype that in fighting, especially in fighting, you have to be born as a warrior, but I don't completely agree to it. There are people who they just will never be a fighter, but it's actually a much smaller percentage than people assume. But they are. Okay. Like I met some of the fighters. They're maybe technically amazingly, but they just don't have the will to fight for many reasons, right? Sometimes there's very deep trauma. Sometimes it's just a lack of skill. When you're 30 and you didn't learn the skill, sometimes it's really hard, especially when you want to fight on the top level, to get this. You have to pick up a lot of new mental skills, and sometimes not enough for this always. But it's a smaller percentage than people think. And I think with good leadership, with good coaching, you can make monsters of people where you would absolutely not. And this is something I discuss with people a lot, because many coaches, for example, like the skill coaches, right, the MMA coaches, other coaches, they believe the other way around.
Okay.
They think like, no, if someone doesn't have it, you won't teach it. Right? But I worked with people in 20, 30 different cultures, countries, right, on the highest level, and I know, some of the boys actually who are now in the top 5 or even the champions in the UFC were my sparring partners 10, 15, 12 years ago. So I know them from how they were, right? I know how much development some were immediately. You could see immediately that's a champion, always, never changed in 10 years. But some of them weren't. I won't call a name now, right? But you could see were not always that stable. And now, number 3, number 2, number 1 in the UFC, right? Constant work with good coaching, right? And that's why we as coaches again, and mental performance coaches or psychologists or the skill coaches have tremendous stakes in it. And that's why I think coaches need to maybe take more information in about this, and maybe be open a little bit more up to this, to the possibility, because again, self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
When you expect something, that exactly what will happen, right? When you as a coach think like, nah, he doesn't have, you won't pay attention to him, you won't build that fight, you give up immediately. It's okay, he will be sparring partner forever. And they don't want to do it, because it's just their belief systems, right? They need to change their belief systems too. And then with that, of course, that fighter, that guy will have a whole different chance. But as a coach, if you think, look, as a mental performance coach, if you start, I had that in the past. Now I have just athletes or clients who I'm really, really well connected with. And I really personally like them, each of them, a lot, because that's where I am at my stage in the career that I can choose. But it was not always like this. And I took on fighters, fighters or athletes, which I shouldn't have taken on, because I completely had a different belief system than them. And I did not always feel that we can do really that growth. But that I learned the last 10 years to do it better too. I improved a little bit.
It's more than a little bit, for sure. But it's 100% the responsibility, right? That the coaches and us as psychologists have to take in working with these men. And the question that arises in my head is, I'm not sure if you can talk specifically about the examples, because I obviously respect the rule of the let's say the secret of your one-on-one work. But I'm wondering whether you would be able to uncover maybe just some of the outside layers of the story of fighters like Janek Błachowicz or like Mateusz Gamrot, right? The people that we know in Poland, they're big, and let's say something that you discovered in them, or you looked at them and said, okay, like he's going to break his old habits or break through that Rubicon once he does that and this and that, right? Because you see that lock that mentally is put on him, and you did the work. And obviously, again, like you don't have to get into the secrets and the details, but I'm just wondering whether you would be able to invite us into your world, what you saw, how you managed that with that fighter, and how it came out.
All right, since probably it's more Polish audience, let's take, because we talked in the media, so everything I talk about now was already talked in different interviews and different.
Okay, so we're safe.
Yeah, we're absolutely good. It's Jan Błachowicz, right?
Yes.
He called me 7 weeks before his fight against Rakic, which is a very, very strong striker in the division. Before that, Jan lost his title, his belt versus Glover Teixeira. I remember, yeah. And he said to me already, I mean, we saw it all, right? Everybody who watched the fight saw it. When he walked out, he wasn't the Polish power the way he was before, right? He just didn't have it, didn't want it for many reasons, right? And so he gave basically a present to Glover, with that belt. He gave up, and he struggled with this. And when he called me, he was in a place in his career, fighting for over 20 years, many strong battles up and down in his career, right? That it was a very taxing career, and that's why I have the biggest respect to Yannick, because he went through an incredible career with so many up and downs. He is the man himself who was able to rebuild, right? But at this point in his career, he didn't feel he can rebuild it by himself. He lost the meaning, he lost the purpose. He said he was tired, he was in pain, and it was actually really interesting how we met the first time. Like, we knew each other before because we followed each other. So, of course, we knew each other, but we never trained on one mat. Haven't spent time on one mat. And then I came with my other lightweight fighter. He's from Lithuania. And I came to sparring to Warsaw. We were in Warsaw, and he's like, do you know someone to spar with? I'm like, we can go to WCA, which is a big gym here. I very, very much like those guys. And we came in, they were extremely inviting. Like, yeah. Of course. So my fighter sparred with Yannick. And I was watching, and I was obviously coaching my fighter. And I said, like, wow, that's the UFC champion? Like, he really didn't look good. He looked like really slow and sloppy, and he didn't feel good, right? And he was moody. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, right, as a coach, as a mental performance coach, you look at them and like, oh, wow, it's not a good day for him today. And then his coaches start talking to me, and they're like, he might need a mental performance coach. So he called me a few days later. He called me. We talked. We immediately had this connection. He's a great guy. And he said, okay, can you help me? 7 weeks to Rakic. I was like, wow, okay. So I came to Warsaw, spent a lot of time with him, observed, obviously, the sparrings, the trainings, everything. And he, like, for him, now, of course, it took me a little bit longer than an hour to figure it out. But after, like, 1 week, okay, it was definitely lost his meaning and his purpose. Didn't feel it anymore. Lost his warrior spirit, because Yannick is a warrior. He's a man from the mountains who's like, he's super simple, straight to the point, doesn't like bullshit, right? This is how he is, bread and butter. That's how we call it in striking. On the simplest way, that's it, with no, like, he never knew how it is with being without a purpose and meaning, right? Because to be a warrior, was his purpose. He believed in it. That's how he identifies with that warrior culture, and we just needed to reactivate it, right? Then, for example, because he was so tired, his nervous system was completely drained, right? He was in sympathetic dominance, completely, right? So we did a lot of nervous system regulation, a lot of deep breathing, I even told him to train less for 2 weeks, right? We didn't train. People think train more. No, train less when you feel like...
He accepted that?
It was hard. Because I told him, you need to trust me. In that moment, we had 6 weeks. I'm like, it's 6 weeks. You need to trust me. And you need to follow my instructions. But then after 2-3 weeks, when I gave him the opportunity to help that nervous system and that body to rest and regenerate more, like, his mind slowed down a little bit. We did a lot of mindfulness training. So because his attention was out of control completely. His attention went to a million places in sparring, but not at this. And so we worked exactly on that, right? Nervous system regulation, mindfulness. So we trained the attentional system, and we reframed or rediscovered his meaning and purpose. Why he is there where he is, which is different when you're 20 and when you're 40 in your career. And after 2-3 weeks, actually, Josh, his coach back then, he said, it was funny. He came to me and he's like, I don't really understand the work you're doing, but he's like, I can see it, because you could see it immediately. He was like, his eyes were like wide open, his posture changed. He started sparring. He was more dynamic. Reaction time was back. Anticipation was back. That, like, he looked younger. Started young, of course, physiology, right? You can't beat, right? That's just how it is. When the physiology is changing, everything is changing.
Of course.
And he, after 2-3 weeks, he felt really good. And then on the day of the fight, I knew in the locker room, I looked at him and I looked into his eyes. I'm like, that was the warrior. we wanted, and he was ready. When he walked out, he was Jan Bochowicz, Polish power, 150%, right? And I completely switched, right, in 6-7 weeks, but intense work. We worked every day.
Yeah. How did you both? How did you both? Because I guess it was for sure a cooperation. How did you both find the first step or the first steps to reevaluate the meaning, to find the purpose again? Because he hasn't lost it. He probably because of the whole physical tiredness and overstimulation of the nervous system. It wasn't just the priority, because the body went into the state of, we have to evacuate, we have to secure everything that will help you live.
Rather into fight, not in fight and flight and freeze, right? When I didn't want to move out of his cave anymore.
Exactly.
Like we talked about different performances, earlier performances, right? Because I watched all of his fights where I could see, okay, what is the fight where you felt the best? Why did you feel the best? What was it? What was your mental state, your spiritual state? How did you train? What did you feel, right? What did you think? And that's part of our job too, right? To navigate this, right? Because sometimes you just have to rediscover, reactivate certain things, right?
Sure.
Because when we're stuck in our mind, in our negative loop, thinking loop and feeling loop, and the nervous system is completely taxed, then we forget. He forgot who he was. So my job was to remind him again who he was, right? And there's techniques for this. There's talks about this. That's why, I spent 6 weeks every day with him, right? I went to the fight with him. We went for 3 weeks to America before this, like until the fight. Like we were glued to each other for 6 weeks, which that's why we built this friendship and this mutual respect we have for each other. And that's like, for example, the last fight and the next fight I went with him. And the last fight with Pereira, I didn't go with him because she basically understood everything he needs to understand. So with some fighters, you work for a very, very long time. With some of my fighters, I work 8, 9, 10 years. And with him, I just have to remind him on certain things. And I don't have to go to the fight with him anymore, which is also good for me, because if you travel all the time, it can be also quite taxing.
Yeah, as we were saying about us managing and you managing your own mental health, like it costs a lot. It's taxing.
Yeah.
It takes a toll on your body and your mind, and you have to then step up and show up for the other fighters that you're still responsible for working with, right?
And if you want to give me, if you want me to give you another example, it's actually Mehmet Khalidov. There was a completely different example. Like I even didn't know that when I started talking to Mehmet. I didn't know that he had 10 years depression, that he suffered, and he talked in all the interviews about that. But I always watched his fights, but I never really watched interviews with him. I didn't live in Poland also most of my life, so all of my life until now. So I didn't know his story. And when he told me the story, and that he has anxieties and a lot of trauma, right? War in Chechnya, that leaves the scars. And that was really interesting. He told me, like, people say I don't have cardio in the third round, because when I go because with Mehmet was like this, when he didn't knock out in the first or second round, in the third round he was breathless, right? He didn't look as good as in round 2. Like, it was very clearly to see that something changed to the negative very often. And he is one very, very good example of a fighter where his power comes from peace. Deeply. And with him, I didn't, like, he knows his meaning, he knows his purpose. Didn't have to work on this. He doesn't need to hear that he's a warrior. He knows that because he went through a lot of really hard fights in his career, and through war and through a lot of things. He doesn't need to hear that. He just needed to get back into peace, into a peaceful state, because his zone of optimum functioning is much on the more lower arousal level. He needed the mental control. He needed also to learn to control his attention. His attentional system was also completely out of whack, right? So with him, we did a lot of relaxation. We did a lot of calm breathing. Of course, a lot of breath techniques. We did a lot of attentional techniques and also mindfulness. And when he went in Stadio Narodowy, now the last fight, he did his best performance, and he said he thinks just a few days ago he said again, when I reflect, it really literally was the best performance of my life, being 43 years old. He was so calm in the fight, and he said just this, that he can control his breath, control his attention, completely engaged in his senses. He said I could hear everything, see everything. I literally could see how hard it was for the opponent to apply those techniques. And he even talked to his opponents in the fight. He talked to through the corner to us. It was ridiculous. He was so calm and conscious in the fight that he talked to everybody and still completely dominated the fight.
Amazing.
And he said actually it was almost like a spiritual experience for him.
Like a full state, full flow state.
Yes, exactly that.
Like being in a tunnel.
Completely in flow, completely aware and attentive and present in that moment. And he was so peaceful. He didn't stress once. And again, completely different example, right? Yannick needed that warrior spirit, that meaning, purpose, let's go, I fight for something. Mehmet needed just to understand how to bring his mind and his body back into peace, right? And regulate his nervous system, of course, because that's always the base of everything we do. But once he controlled his attentional system, his breathing, he said he went straight into flow. He said literally he entered the cage. He was like time flew, and he's like, and then in the same time it stands still. He's like, it was like almost like entering a completely new dimension. And he said it's an addictive state. I'm like, I know.
It is.
It is taught the flow state. And again, that was a completely different example, but for me, absolutely also beautiful and amazing to be 60,000 people, Stadio Narodowy, Mehmet, an icon of Poland, being with him. And that even for me, I've been to so many UFC fights, but that was really emotional to see him.
Yeah.
After the fight, we had this moment in the cage where he looked at me, and honestly, those are the moments where I know that I'm exactly at that place where I should be in my life. He looked at me, and he said in Polish, obviously, but she showed with the finger on me, and he said, "You, Daria, you. Ty, Daria, ty." And honestly, I even have to almost I have to cry. I immediately get tears in my eyes, because that he had tears in his eyes, I had tears in my eyes, because of I could see that he liberated himself, right? He could step into a state, and we all could do it, right? Into a state where we finally liberated from all the shadows, from all, even the depression, even the anxiety, which we all partly have in our lives, from all the fears. Who are we without all of this, without the shadows, without the heaviness, right? He broke completely through. And that moment, I never, to the end of my life, forget this moment when he said, and I have still the sound, everything in my head when he said, "Ty, Daria, ty." I get even goosebumps when I speak about it. It was the biggest present, or one of the biggest presents a human could do to me. And on both sides, he says, of course, for him too. This is not just for fighters. I truly believe that we all can get into the state, right? With the right community, with the right coaching, with the right mental skill training, and to overcome 10 years of depression and anxieties and trauma, being 43 years old, and shine and step into your biggest potential, where everybody basically is like, he's old, right? He's old. And he did it. And all of us can do it with the right care, with the right surrounding, with the right work.
You've got me emotional too. I had tears in my eyes too, so I can feel it, and I can sense it. It's very real, and I thank you for sharing both of the stories, because they're extremely inspirational. And now it's just the thing that just came to my head is how great would it be to have Mohamed on this podcast, but along with you. So we sit, the three of us sit together, and we go through all the experiences and chat and record like a trio podcast.
Yeah, maybe I can ask him, because we do a lot of things actually together. We work on many different projects together.
Yeah.
So,
but that would have to be live. We would have to meet up in a studio, somewhere in let's say Warszawa, right? And have it. And
it should be in Polish. Oh wow, I have to pick up my Polish.
Or we can do a hybrid.
Yeah, because he doesn't speak English, right? So.
Oh, okay.
For Mohamed, I always tell him, for you, he's because I always speak this hybrid of Polish and English in Poland.
Yeah.
So he's like, can you please speak Polish to me? Because when I get really emotional, I immediately switch into English. And he's like, yeah. He's imitating me constantly on my English.
Jesteśmy w Polsce, mówimy po polsku.
Yeah. That's not even what he says, but he does.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
And he's like, he observes me like I observe him, right? So he's in the session. He knows speaking about this, that's a super good example. Like when I came, obviously I was his coach. He needed me for this fight. I gave him all the tools I had, right? So I was leading him to until after the fight. But after the fight, or during it, we became really friends.
Yeah.
And now it is really like this. He can see also immediately my weaknesses, my weak moments, my weak days. And he calls me out. He's like, coach, did you meditate lately? And he comes.
I think you missed out on your mindfulness, Daria.
Yes. He's like, what? Dlaczego jesteś taka nerwowa? Why?
I can imagine this tone from the interviews. I never met Mohamed, but I can imagine it. Dlaczego jesteś taka nerwowa?
But look, like when you also because I think he is really an example young men should look up to. Man is literally a pure alpha. Like this man is so strong. He has this absolute champion's alpha leader energy. He's he talks like this. When he looks at you, he really looks into you, into your soul. You can see it. He's smart, right? He's an amazing fighter. And look, struggled with depression for 10 years.
And openly talked about that, right?
And I even didn't know. When I got to know his story, I was even more fascinated, because I always liked him as a fighter, because he's when someone knows our sport, he's an incredible tactician. I mean, he's one of the best strikers there is. Yeah. And also grapplers, right? He's really, really great. He's a complete athlete. And look, for his whole career, the third round, he always like, no cardio in the third round. It was because of stress. Now, he learned how to deal with the stress. He faced certain things he maybe couldn't face before. Gone completely. True flow state, completely liberated. And I think he's a great role model for young men, for sure. Went exactly actually through everything we just talked about.
Amazing. Yeah. That was a great summary. I almost want to say, I don't want to end it. I know we have to put a dot right here and end today's conversation, but I know it's definitely not the first. It's our second official podcast episode. I know it's not the last, and I really think it could be something very interesting if we would have planned that recording with the three of us, and just really tap into that mindset of a real champion, right? That we spoke about, and just give Mohamed the microphone and let him speak, and maybe discuss something, ask questions, and just have a mental health feast together.
You know what? It's a great example, because Mohamed is a very strong character. And look, he took me on and his coach, and I'm a very sensitive person. And people who would listen to me 15 minutes, they know that I'm very passionate, I'm very sensitive. I am, I'm just Daria, right? And he saw I'm not exactly what people would think, the stereotypical leader of alpha males in the top level in the UFC. It's not. A lot of people are like, this is not how I expected you to be. I thought you were much tougher, much more, a little bit also even arrogant, right? Much more distant. I'm not, right? I am, and it's the best way for me, right? With my character, it's the best way to work with the guys. And He, for example, he said that immediately. If you would try to match me, he said, or like to call me out to go into competing with me, he's like, I would immediately shut down. But I didn't compete with him, right? I didn't try to put my force on him, right? I navigated really, and I showed up as I am. And he said, and that's not just him. A lot other my fighters said that too. Actually, Gamrot said that too for his last fight. He was like, "You're so into it, you're so engaged emotionally into my fights, and I can see how much you care." And that's my feminine side. That actually, true men, they really recognize that, and they can work with that. So people sometimes think, right, it would be tough, especially as a female coach. You don't, because you will never match a man, right? You can't compete with a man physically, especially not physically, right? But also mentally, it's not about competition. It's about really navigating that topics, and that's also I learned a lot. I learned a lot about working with my athletes too.
Amazing. Now we really have to put a dot on. Thank you so much for today's conversation. I think we really got into the topic, right, and we went on different parts, and I think it was real, right? The whole vibe between us was real, and I loved it. And for sure, it's not our last conversation, as I said. And
I will ask him.
exactly, yeah, it's probably going to be one of the next ones, and one of the very many, because I feel we have a good energy together, and we can do something interesting, with that system of values, right? The mindset and the route that we want to take many athletes to become better at everything they do. So thank you.
I thank you, because I think you have great questions, and I hope that I create value for people, because I want people to learn something, to get something positive out of it, so they can evolve and thrive. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much again, and I hope to see you and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Got it. That was good. Yeah, it was a very good energy. I think we once we tap into that, it was no stopping us. Yeah.